Episode 40. I'm so happy to have a special guest with us today. His name is Joel Schaefer, and I found Joel on the Alpha Vedic podcast. And I'm just so excited to really deepen into sexuality and relationships with you. So, yeah, thank you so much for saying yes, Joel. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Really honored to be here. I'm glad you felt called to invite me, and yeah, I'm glad we can talk about this incredible subject.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're going to dive in pretty quickly. But first, do you just want to kind of give people a sense of who you are, what you do in the world? I would love that.
Please, yeah. So I've been a student to many shamans since I was really young. 16 years old, it got really intense right away, and I've been traveling all over the world to meet with different people who I was called to, and it led me to a lot of the Toltec side of it. Was what really the Castaneda material is what I jumped into mostly. And so I really wanted to validate that information by going and working with really powerful sorcerers and shamans, and discovered some really unique medicine men and women, men of knowledge, women of knowledge that are very private and usually don't take people on. But I was fortunate to get to have some really powerful live-in apprenticeships and do some deep work. And so I'm just now kind of finally sharing that and becoming a teacher. And I teach courses and do one-on-one sessions, and I work with couples as well and helping with a vast range of things. But primarily, I help people with the Toltec movements and the recapitulation work and the lucid dreaming side. And so the recapitulation ends up being very much a review of your sexual history, and it sort of unearths all the stuff that I've heard you share and talk about as well. But from a more of a shamanic perspective is where I come from. So that's about
Oh
it.
my gosh. Okay, so this is incredible. I love this. We could just go right into it. I'm not someone who loves small talk, so I'm like, let's go right into it. So for people who aren't familiar with recapitulation, can you just describe that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a life review process, but you do it in a very like detached way where you go into the memories, you set up the scene, and you see the memory itself. So you pick something really simple to begin with, something that you've recently had an experience or a memory, and you just try to visualize it as best as possible. And you use the breath you scan the scene with your head back and forth. And as you scan from one side to the other, you breathe in the energy you left in the scene. And then on the scanning on the way back, you breathe out the energy that you may have taken. So you're just retrieving your luminosity, your light that you left within the moment. And so shamans say when you die, that your life passes before your eyes. And so they seek to do that inventory before death. They want to go back and get access to all their feelings and memories. And it sounds like a daunting task, but you actually try to achieve it. You try to review every single event of your life. And once you start doing it, it's like you build a muscle and you start being able to do it. It's like your inventory surfaces and you have access to memories you totally forgot about. And so you're just basically it's a cellular purification process. You start to feel it. They call it puking up your past because it feels like you're purging when you're really doing it. And when you're getting that light back and that energy, you feel a massive boost. And it happens to lend energy to lucid dreaming practices. The more you recapitulate, the lighter you get, the more capable you are of doing advanced dream work. Um, so it's something that is designed in a very particular way to serve as a method of freedom. And shamans even say if you recapitulate your entire life, when it comes to time to cross over into the infinite, that you can basically offer this inventory that you've taken instead of your awareness. So rather than recycle back into the system, you could basically because that meant when your memory is leaving, like, so when your life is flashing before your eyes, that is the inventory being taken. All your experiences are being taken by that which bestows awareness. And so because Yeah, basically we are projections or extensions of the universe that are gaining experience. And then when we recycle, all that experience is returned to source. But shamans say if you give that recapitulation instead, then you don't have to lose those memories, you get to keep them. And rather than recycle back in, you can merge with eternity with your awareness intact. So it's a very advanced and powerful shamanic thing to do this. Um, and it just opens so many doors because it's a very particular type of focus that you have to kind of get over the hypnosis that most people are under in order to be this deliberate with your time and energy. So yeah, cellular purification on a very advanced level.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for describing that. Yeah, I love this concept of purification. I talk about this too, especially with sexuality. I use more of a, I guess, a combination of a psychological approach and spiritual approach, energetic approach too, but I love hearing your perspective on how there's different ways that you can do this. This is something that you can, like, there's just a lot of, I'm thinking of my own life if I did that and how long it would take. I would totally love to do that. But like, yes, you have to like be disciplined with your time and actually have the desire to go back and do it.
Yeah, it's sort of, it starts off slow and you can barely do it, but over time it gets easier and easier, and it's not as arduous as it sounds because the memories just start surfacing. And so if you trust that you're going to live a long life, you can just do a little bit over the course of your life, and it will actually not be that daunting of a task. But I do know people who just went into it and spent just a couple solid years, and they were able to get the chunk of the majority of their life done. So depends on, yeah, one's strategy or approach to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so would you just focus on the times that maybe were traumatic or difficult, or everything?
It's everything, the moments of awe, the moments that were terrifying, all of it. But ideally, you just pick a subject, an area, like all your sexual partners, and you just go through them. Um, and then you could pick like high school and try to go through high school. You could pick just sections of time. And
Yeah.
but what I find is that I'll be recapitulating a really strong memory and something else will show up that has nothing to do with the subject I'm in, and I just go with it. And then
Mhm.
another one will show up, and so I just start trusting the process. Um, and it just takes getting used to because you get so much energy that it can almost be overwhelming. You have to have your outlets pretty dialed in as you start to save energy in this way because um, we if without our creativity and our imagination, having too much energy running could get kind of tricky. So yeah, it takes getting used to.
Yeah, I love that part because then if you suddenly are, gaining energy, it's kind of like some people wouldn't know what to do with that, right? And that could get them into trouble or have energetic consequences.
Yeah, and it really is, it is equivalent to sexual energy too, which is because and shamans say sexual energy and dreaming energy are the same thing. There's no separation. It's just what are you going to do with that energy, and can you do both? Can you be creative with how you navigate having a lot of chi, basically?
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I would love to get into, the sexuality piece in terms of, what I experienced in my own life with regards to early sexual trauma was that there was kind of like an implanting of darker energies, right? That then sort of hijacks you. And so I was actually just talking about this with a woman this morning in a session, but it's kind of like, what do you do when that kind of energy comes and maybe gives you more, energy, right? Then you maybe, is it yours? Is it not yours? Right. And like, what do you do with it?
Yeah, I mean, there's, getting to know learning to be able to handle that energy running through you and being able to move it through your body so that it's not just isolated to your genitals, right? So you want to move it through your body. And that takes practice. It's not an easy thing to learn how to do, but it's such a breakthrough when you do have that. So dreaming is a task that you can use that energy for. And there's all kinds of ways to learn dreaming, or lucid dreaming, or what we call dreaming awake. So shamans learn to be like on mushrooms, even though they're not on mushrooms. Like you learn to be in these altered states all the time. And
Mhm.
so that energy is perfectly applicable for that. But yes, and what shamans have discovered is there's a force that is higher on the food chain than us. And it's not something that most people can see, but shamans learn to see these forces and they come to understand how they function. And they basically have learned to control us through impulses. And so becoming very disciplined is the way in which you oppose this force.
Mhm.
You have to, but not in a repressed way that could backfire. So it's a very creative process, right? We want to be having experiences and passionate and open our life up to, connecting and all of the things, but at the same time, like an apprentice to a medicine man will probably go on multiple vision quests throughout their life, and they'll usually be told at some point to be celibate. And if you don't listen to that, things will probably get pretty tricky for you. So you want to listen to what spirit tells you to do when you're being given really direct guidance. And that can be life changing, is that time in your life where you're taking a break and using that energy for something else. And I was so fortunate to find Castaneda when I was 16. And at 17 years old, I didn't even have a sexual thought for over a year because I was so focused on this material that I was reading. And it's very much about how to use that energy for other things. So it was just the perfect time in my life to be freeing myself from what was already, I was very active sexually from 13 to 17. And then to be able to take that break, it completely changed my perspective on what I was really attracted to. Like it became all about energy, not about what most people are conditioned to perceive as to be attracted to. And so there's a lot of authenticity that heals one from the programming. So if you can become really authentic and really have like consciousness of, yeah, what really matters, and like people are in the hookup culture aren't really thinking about what it would be like to be in old age with the person they're connecting with. But shamans say basically everyone you sleep with, you're going to have to be with in the afterlife. So you want to
Oh.
be very careful with who you bond with.
Interesting. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you for sharing some of your personal story. I can't even picture, at that age, especially being a young man, how that's just incredible. And so I think, what are your thoughts on what's happening right now collectively with the hookup culture and just all of there just seems to be a lot of darker energy or lower level energy present right now that's running. Like, if you can just really zoom out, like what's going on a bigger level right now?
I mean, it's just, as the veil starts to lift, there's going to be the forces rise to meet each other. And so there's going to be an attempt to harvest as much for these parasitic energies, to harvest as much energy as possible as they're starting to be more exposed. So, like shamans say that we have two minds. We have our natural mind, and then we have this foreign installation. And we
Mhm.
have thoughts that we think are ours, but they're actually just the program running.
Yeah.
And so you learn to be silent, and then you'll notice the difference. And that takes a long time to learn silence, like true silence. It's beyond meditation. It's like a very unique state of focus. Um, so yeah, you start to delineate the difference. And so this force, it's afraid of being discovered by each one of us, because then it starts to lose its food. Just like if we were in a situation where food was scarce,
Yeah.
we would feel fear, we would feel concerned. How are we going to eat? This is the same thing. It's truly just discovered that we're easy to control. It came from somewhere else. It used to not be here. We don't know how or what exactly, but it makes sense that we would be challenged. Like it's a predatory realm. Uh, and so yeah, it's an unfortunate thing to observe all of the people who do not understand what's happening, and that they think by all this idea that everybody can swap partners in the yoga communities in Seattle and stuff. It's really like everybody's been with each other. They just keep, and it's just like, it's so unfortunate because it's given like that means you're like more aware or something if you can be
Mm,
like, oh, well, I'm not jealous, I can share my
right.
partner.
Right.
It's all virtue signaling,
Yeah.
and it's all going against what their truest deep feelings are. And if you could get them to admit to it, then they would but that would mean facing a mirror. And that's what I do, is I try to offer people a chance to be honest with themselves. And if they really are willing to do that, eventually they'll start to admit that there's a lot of wounding that goes undealt with, and then it creates a blueprint in which our relationships become, rather than evolutionary, they become quite toxic at some stage, unless you're working with somebody who can help you see different things. So yeah, it's hopefully people will come out. So, I don't expect many, but I think little bits of those groups, people will start to break away and recognize this isn't going to work, and start to do the recapitulation work or something to get that energy back. There is a way to heal this stuff, and the sooner the better.
I love that you mentioned that part about, the whole trend around open relationships and, all of that and how, the words that you used were so beautiful, like the natural, goes against their natural state, which I also agree and have found in my own life that monogamy is so beautiful. And so many people have this warped idea of like, that doesn't work, monogamy doesn't work, marriage doesn't work, right? And so I'm sure some of it is just like this reaction to maybe see, like wanting to explore, and that's all fine. But I do think that the programming around all the polyamory and all that stuff, I do think that it's being kind of blasted at people, and in addition to maybe an organic curiosity, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah. So do you think like actually at our core that we are monogamous?
I mean, this is a tricky one. I think it's the only way to be an honor is to be monogamous. But I also think it has to be signed and guided. And so I don't think we're necessarily meant to have two virgins come together without any experience
Yeah.
and expect that relationship to be eternal. And so I think we're contracted to have a certain level of experience, likely, typically. Otherwise, the codependency of that, just trying to be with somebody for your entire life, I think would be really more challenging to achieve without becoming unconscious. Because a lot of monogamous relationships are very unconscious,
Right.
and they're just living in fear with each other and afraid to, so it's just so hard to say that there's one right over the other. I'm not religious. I believe all religion is programming, and that we're much more evolutionary than that. What shamans do is they become celibate, and they reach pure affection with each other. And it's so beautiful. And then they do things like turn into animals in together, like shapeshift and do dreaming together and have the most incredible things. And sometimes they make love as animals, in their dream time. And sometimes they do that with more than one person. But it's totally different than going out on a date and having drinks and having sex with them. It's like, it's dreaming, it's very mature. It takes a level of, yeah, like power. And so when you have power, you respect people who have power. And so I don't know how, I find it also very strange, but um, following spirit and listening to guidance and getting signs and omens will tell you whether to continue in a relationship or not. And sometimes you're going to be told to exit because for a variety of reasons, there's something they haven't been honest about and you're sensitive to, or so it's just a tricky thing to answer. I don't have a definite answer to that, but I'm open to, I would love for there to be one, and I hope there is. I just I recognize that wolves and different animals represent different ways of being, and their monogamy, I think, is a powerful thing. And ideally, I would love for that to be there to be a clear way for us to explain these things to the younger generations. Um, but I think saving your sexual energy and learning how to not be um, wasteful with it and letting it build um, is a powerful way to get to know what's really going on within you. And then if you can do that and you can find another partner who's willing to do that with you, um, then you can both call each other, you can sort of be guiding each other and supporting something really magical. And yeah, there's just so much to learn from facing somebody who can match your power and where you're not accommodating each other, but you're really, listening and not getting into autopilot or expectation around how often you should be coming together and all of that stuff. And it's very confronting to be in a relationship that's evolutionary. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love all of that, and that's what it took a lot of years of making mistakes, stumbling and falling in relationships for me. I guess it's the process in general of gaining maturity over time, right? And so in my younger years, definitely explored, and I think that's normal and natural for most people. I like what you said about maybe, rather than this expectation of two virgins coming together, being together for the rest of their life. There is a normal period for most people of exploration, and that's all good. But I think once you reach a point where you're open to going deep with somebody, and that takes, it takes some preparation, right? And like you have to be in the right frame of mind because, like you said, evolutionary relationships or conscious relationships, they're no joke, they're for people who really want to dig in and do the work and who aren't afraid of looking at their stuff. And to be able to use them as like these evolutionary vehicles is, I believe it's so exciting for me because I feel like we're right on the edge of being able to step into that. Um, and I don't know if it's necessarily that like the masses are ready right now, but I do see that like what's going on is preparing people to be able to start to use them in that way. And so, yeah, this is a beautiful segue into relationships in general and how you can start to work with them. And so, do you want to share anything that you've learned along the way about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been so fortunate that my wife is very sensitive and has called me and invited me to that she was willing to face certain aspects of herself and really get honest with what she wanted and was, had the wherewithal to really find ways to, you know, offer me and hold space for me to come to where she was at. And um it I recognize that a lot of men wouldn't that I know wouldn't have been able to do this just by the perspective of how things should be. And so listening and really allowing your ability to know what's a magical invitation in your life, or if somebody's manipulating you, or there's just dynamics within power that are tricky. And so we don't want to for men it can be easy to put women on a pedestal, and then there can be a lot of manipulation that can occur with that. So it's really about communication and activating your throat chakra and being able to say what you truly feel and getting to your real feelings rather than your projections, and having, when both partners can see each other and reflect each other these things and honestly convey what they're witnessing and be able to handle those exchanges. So we practice something called witnessing rather than and then just talking back and forth. We hold space for one person to say until they're complete,
Mhm.
and then you wait, and then you speak until you say you're complete. So there's not You're not interrupting, you're fully holding space for this person to express themselves. And there's all kinds of tools in the shamanic and tantra world where communication is supported through systems. Like I see, I feel. So you start off saying, I see this about you, I feel this, and or just to have that space held. Honestly, working with people who have done this work, I think when a couple is willing to work with a third party who is capable of guiding, as a mirror and starting to see what needs to be said and helped with, is pretty key. And it's not going to be perfect every time. Every person has holes in their consciousness. So you're going to find those areas where that helper is unaware of certain things, but that doesn't mean you can't use them for the parts that they're really aware of. And so my partner and I have worked with many very powerful people over the years that held space for us to work through some heavy stuff. We had a really difficult beginning, and so ours is kind of the opposite, where we didn't have the honeymoon phase at all. It was like really difficult, and now all these years later, it's getting really to that point where it's like we're resetting everything, and it's really stronger than ever. So that's been fortunate and difficult, but being willing to raise your hand and ask for help, and there's going to be a force that comes in and tries to stop you when you go to step up to the next stage, and most people allow that force. Like something will happen, your car will break down, and oh, I don't have the money now, or whatever it is. But if you really are listening and you really want and are willing to admit to what you want, it's not immediate gratification. It's a long-term powerful connection with somebody who you can get to know, and that can help you to get into your heart and really take care of yourself. And especially when you get older, you realize how valuable that is. But when we're young, we just don't recognize that unless you're kind of wise at a young age, or you've had something happen that's really revealed that to you. So shamans talk about death as an advisor, that you want to ask your death, ask that part of yourself, what's really of value here? Because when you're on your deathbed, that's when all those feelings come in. I wish I would have done this. I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish, I hadn't left the woman that I really loved. Like it can hit you really hard at a late stage. But if you could have access to those feelings now, then you can completely, not end up feeling regret. You can actually act on those feelings and speak what you want to say to the person you truly love. And sometimes it's the person you love the most where it's the most difficult. And it could be a partner from 20 years ago that's still in your field because of how strong of a potential the bond was. So it's a lot to face and look at and feel into.
Oh yeah, thank you I love this part about like that there wasn't a honeymoon phase for you too. It's really interesting to see because as we're shifting into doing relationships differently, people are starting to understand there's potential there that is really, really untapped on a wide scale, right? And so like I see that the old way of maybe like the stages of relationships, it's sort of expiring and like transforming into something new. There's a lot of people who maybe are coming together, maybe they're at a certain point in their life or a certain level of consciousness where there isn't a honeymoon phase because like you kind of jump into it eyes wide open, you're willing to face your stuff together. I'm not saying this necessarily was your case, right? But like this idea of the honeymoon phase, one of my colleagues calls it a reverse honeymoon, where it's like really hard at the beginning and you have to work through a lot of stuff. And then actually it gets way, way better and easier as you go on. So it's just so interesting to see the shifts that are happening relationally and like what's possible for us. Um,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah. There's a lot of pure affection that can happen when you're willing to do, when you're aware of these things in the beginning of the relationship. And so there's so much potential there that when all the challenges show up early on, they serve as, yeah, spirit will tell you this is for a reason. And what others might look at as something that you should get out of or that it's toxic, you don't want to let other people project onto you, because you know what the feelings are in your being and what the guides and signs are pointing to. So if we can stop comparing ourselves to others and really know that we're all unique and different and we're being worked with, then we won't allow stereotypes or other people's perception of things to keep us from following our heart.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Yeah, comparison is just such a trap, right? I want to touch back on something you mentioned, which is coming together in relationship with your wife, certain things where you made a comment about like many men maybe wouldn't have been open or available to that level of relating or what she was inviting you into, right? Could you speak maybe any thoughts about how you see things? Like number one, I guess the importance of understanding masculine, feminine energy, but then also just the evolutionary like trajectory of men and women and how we're relating and what are the shifts that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's amazing, women nowadays are realizing how much they've been using their masculine to function within the patriarch. And the Earth Mother is like calling them to go back, all to really go back to the feminine.
Right.
And so men have a real opportunity to assist in that process and really help a woman in that way. And it's such an honor to be able to do that. But it's messy. It's going to be confusing and it's going to be triggering. And you're gonna go through it together. And most people aren't willing to go through the really heavy stuff because, it's just they had an idea of how it's supposed to look, all the Hollywood, Disneyland hypnosis of what, for both sides, for the women wanting to be the princess and then a lot of that does play out and men like to treat women like that. And then, and it creates this well, these power dynamics where there's expectation because of that treatment, and then women are putting out in order to, or not putting out in order to manipulate, and it's all about power. So, um, finding a really, really authentic person isn't going to mean that they're just evolved. It means they're going to be really confused for a long period of time because they're trying to be authentic in a world that isn't. They're
Mm.
going to look crazy. They're going to look unstable at times because they're feeling things that you can't and no one else is looking at. So a really powerful woman will rage. She'll get fierce. And that doesn't, most men are intimidated by power. And women are actually in the energetic world way more powerful than men. In the dreaming world, in the spiritual world, men in the physical world are way more powerful than women. They can strike fast and hard, and they have physical capacity to dominate. If in a more caveman, cave world sort of world, right? Which still exists on some levels. So knowing this difference and understanding this, then being able for a man to not be threatened by a woman who's willing to point things out and call him out on his unconsciousness. And then her being able to then really, when he's in his center and his throat chakra is activated and he can expose and show her the areas in which she's undeveloped, if her ego is healthy enough that she's not going to deny that. So I'll say something to my wife and she'll almost puke because it's so spot on, right? And that means there's something undealt with there.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. She'll be able to just target exactly where my unconsciousness is playing out. So she sees things that men don't see, and I see things that women don't see because we're different. My teacher said there's only two tribes in this world, the tribe of man and the tribe of woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
we learn to work together.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. So powerful, right? And we're getting all sorts of messaging right now with all the gender stuff that's not true, right? And so and that's being diluted working with these two polarities that need to come together, right? For that, yeah, for the divine union aspect. And so do you want to say anything about that, the mass hypnosis around the gender confusion?
Yeah, I mean it's if you really work with each person who's in that process, and if you could get them to be honest with themselves, it's not that there's just a wound, and it's manifesting in this need to be special, or and I'm not saying like with the native people, there are winktes, there are beings who are born, men who are born with almost like even sometimes a dual spirit, or all kinds of things where it can be so confusing. And that's okay. They can be, totally experience that. It's when it starts to get into surgeries, and then that you need to call me this or that, and it's this whole world. But when it's going after kids when they're so susceptible, it's just such a tragedy. And it's absolutely, it should be illegal. And the fact that this gone on this intensely, and it's this far along, um, with these puberty blockers and stuff, it's just tragic. But at the same time, it represents where we're at. And there were prophecies that the men would turn into women and the women would turn into men. So we're witnessing something that was foreseen. Obviously, I think it's by design. Um, and the people who are part of that agenda are possessed.
Yeah.
And that's why, so I don't even blame the people. And I'm not at odds with the forces that have possessed them. Those forces are simply outmaneuvering us. They're more intelligent. We are its food source. It feeds off of our fear and our unconscious emotion,
Yeah.
right? And so shamans say that you can shapeshift from male to female. You don't need, if you really wanted to be able to do both, then there's an old school traditional magical way to learn about those both sides of yourself. We both genders have male and female energy within them. I think at birth, even it's there, or at conception, it's probably determined, but there's a point where it transitions. And so we have access to all that stuff in a more natural way. And so, in a way, it's the inverted world that we're in, everything's opposite. So, you find a way to hijack the power by convincing people to go about it in an artificial way rather than a natural way.
Yeah. Yeah, super powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you talking about that topic. And so I think for me too, thinking about how, it's interesting. I think the organic maybe drive for women to, maybe become more empowered and vice versa for men, connecting the head and the heart and all of that, beautiful, right? To be a little bit more balanced internally. I love Carl Jung's concept of, the animus and the anima and the integration. And so like, um, with his work is so just beautifully spiritual, and thinking about coming into more of an inner union and how that really is like a path to spiritual enlightenment in a way, so maybe one of my theories is that maybe as we're becoming we're walking that path a little bit collectively, like people are opening and balancing to that, and then that natural impulse is getting hijacked, like you said. um,
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Well said.
and but like I really just agree with you that it's a reflection, all of that is a reflection of where we're at. And so as a parent myself, it's been really hard for me to digest the fact that fellow parents, because being a parent totally changes everything, right? Like about you. One of my good friends was like, when I was pregnant with my son, he's like, there's two kinds of people in the world, people who are parents and people who are not parents, because it fundamentally changes everything about you. And so just the fact that parents are so on board with all of the stuff and the puberty, like it just, I just can't I just can't metabolize that. Do you know what I mean? It's just like how have we gotten to this place where like that's even something you would consider? But it just speaks to what you're saying about all of the mind control programming and how thick that is and how it can completely take over a person.
Yeah, I mean it's I one of my good friends who woke me up to a lot of truths in this world. He kind of came up in the rave scene and was and so did I. We had a lot of fun in the 90s in Seattle and Portland and there was a lot of cross-dressing, right? There was a lot of like alternative situations. And so, I'm really surprised to see him saying this, but he says, well, we have to support it because they'll kill themselves if we don't. And it's like, okay, well, I, it's such a final statement, right? It's like, so for sure, like that's his perception of it. And so I think a lot of people are, that brings in a level of, it's like you've sort of forced into a corner to go along with it if that's how it is. And so some of that's the way in which it's being upheld is this: we need to accept people as they are. But what's happening is that the parents are often, whether they know it or not, they're opening that door and actually projecting it onto their children.
Mhm.
And then the kids are taking that on. And when you make a decision as a kid, it actually is um it has a lot of power. Like when you make a promise or you make a wish as a child, there's a lot of energy behind it. And so we set these things in motion just by getting an idea in our head. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was raised in Seattle in a super liberal scene, and I kind of was not paying attention to what the agenda was as far as this goes. But now looking back, I understand this has been really well designed and planned as a means to disempower us and to weaken men, especially because if a society has really powerful men, then they're not as easy to control.
Yeah.
And that's basically, and so places like Sweden and stuff are trying to make it where 50% of the engineers have to be female and 50% of the men, like you have to be halfway down the line. And so all these women are turning into men. And that's so destructive to society because there's nothing more beautiful than feminine energy in its full expression. And men should be warding and protecting and making sure that women can be in their power in that way. But now it's flipping where the men are more feminine to balance the fact that the women have become so masculine.
Right.
Of course, this is happening. It's a product of uh, feminism, which was an inverted means to, yeah, to weaken the nuclear family and to get to the point where this 2030 agenda stuff could play out. And it's really happening in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to participate, but it looks like a good amount of people are. And so rather than me getting caught up trying to change the collective, I'm just recognizing that I'm going to have to navigate this obstacle course as best as I can. And so that's shaman's perspective, is that you don't get caught up in worrying about what's going to play out with the masses. You learn to go inward and find a way to, yeah, basically, it may seem selfish, but you become, you get very boundaried and you stop really interacting with a lot of people and your circle gets really small and you just accept things as they are and you find a way to take care of yourself as best as possible. And those that are called to learn about these things you share and help them to come into their power so that they're not getting drained by being at odds with the world. And if enough people can go inward, then the solution to the collective will actually manifest. We just need larger numbers.
I love that so much. Yeah. I used to actually in the early days of like kind of waking up, especially to all this stuff, what I call the war on love, sex, and relationships. This was a couple of years ago, a little bit longer. that the veil was lifted. I mean, there was a lot of that I was already aware of, but that's when some of the things specifically in that vein were
Yeah.
shown to me. So yeah, there was a lot of just like a lot of fury and emotion and anger at that. And I did go through a little bit of a phase of like wanting to shout from the rooftops and tell people, and it's all good, right? But like I love what you say, and you know, turning within and doing the inner work that you're being called to do, and then just trusting that, you know, the people who are meant to hear your message, or you just being a light in the world, will is probably the best thing that you can do. But yeah, I'm just looking at the time. We'll probably go for about 10 more minutes or so. But I think what I really would love to do is go a little bit deeper on like the male and the male female kind of roles, you know, because you shared about how men are becoming so, yeah, just disempowered in general. And I feel very strongly about that as a, you know, I have a son, I want to raise him into a good man. And what do you think is, if you could sort of like summarize the spell that, you know, men are under right now, like how do you see that?
Yeah. You know, without the rites of passage that would be in a more traditional native culture, we're not given, you know, we become domesticated,
Mm.
right? So we need to rewild somehow. And so I think both men and women need to return to nature as much as possible. Men need physical outlets like martial art training, powerful mentors, other men that can help them to develop, you know, their ability to anchor and root themselves energetically. Um, and you know, I think it's a matter of sort of um, the challenge in this world is you might go to a dojo and offer a young man a chance to learn something. You might find out that that teacher is kind of culty, or he's, you know, so you're gonna hit and miss about finding powerful mentors, but that's part of the journey. And so we wanna you know, offer boys and men an opportunity to get to know what they're capable of with their bodies, sports, and things of this nature, because but not in a way that creates these conditions like the typical high school jock dynamic, right? So it's hard to kind of to help a child. You don't want to control their life. You have to trust them to make decisions at some point, and how to manifest, you know, what they're here to do, because their lessons are going to be uh, going to guide them based on the reactions or the responses to certain situations. I would say that, you know, guys are there's an opportunity to really move into a place of healing from the distractions like porn and Hollywood. And if they can see through that stuff and really take a break and be given just an experience that's outside of that conditioning, it feels so good that it becomes obvious that it's not serving you in the way that it would appear, you know, just because everyone else is doing it. So, and I think women are, you know, it's such an opportunity for women right now to really take care of their sexual energy in a way that isn't being promoted. But if that inner calling guides you to be patient and to trust and to heal, you know, all of our nervous systems are unregulated from the way in which we're how much screen time, all the different dynamics that we're being bombarded with. So you know, men naturally can ward and protect energetically, like a conscious female who is becoming lucid in their dream time, or is becoming aware of her femininity. Um, it's a real honor for a man to be able to do that in a more natural setting. And so, in any way that that can be modeled for the next generation, or it just modeled in general, general, right? So this is the 100th monkey thing again. The more people that have an evolutionary relationship, the more likely more people will see it, sense into it, be attracted to it. And so it's a matter of that kind of courage to do that, for that to spread, because fear spreads like wildfire, but so does courage. And so the more people that are, yeah, willing to be authentic, to be patient, and to trust, and to learn to listen to their intuition. So it's going back to that natural mind and that foreign mind. So the foreign installation is a program, and men are designed to climb to the top of their mountain and stand on the top of their life and say, I achieved this. This is who I am. This is my company I built. They're really driven to like represent, right? And women don't need to do that because they're open. They have access to everything already. So there's this idea that women try to behave like men, right, in order to sort of generate income or whatever it is. But when that balance of male and female is understood, then there will be a magnetic dynamic that will, if you're really, as a woman, you're willing to heal and go back into the feminine, then if rather than, be concerned about aging and fear of not being with somebody, trusting that your energy will build and that beautiful things will happen, including magical partnerships, then you'll get out of these dating apps and go into trust and go back to spirit and go, like as little kids, we had pure affection, we had imagination and creativity. And the way in which a male expresses that is so different than a female. And we just really need, for that trust piece to come back, because aging, this concept, it's a curse. We don't have to age at all. Recapitulation can cure that. We can, in fact, reverse a lot of our aging. Doesn't mean we're not going to change. But like Don Juan in the Castaneda books, he was in his 90s and he took such good care of himself that he could out physically maneuver Carlos Castaneda in his 40s. So old native people, we're designed to be hunting buffalo until we're 120, and like living fully. And so men need to hunt. I know there's a lot of movement to not eat animals and stuff, but I totally disagree. I think it's a natural, like it's a very important piece for men to be getting that energy and eventually learning how to get that on their own, and for women to be able to honor men instead of try to change them or try to condition them or control them. And so that's where the out of balance female is, trying to have power in the relationship, is by often using her sexual power to manipulate or control, and get her needs met because she doesn't feel she has any other way to do so. So there's a lot of stuff to unpackage. And so we have so much to unlearn so that we can remember what was natural. And that's the authenticity that's desperately needed.
I love all that so much, and I'm just so grateful for your book recommendations. I'm starting to read The Sorcerer's Crossing, and I'm so fascinated by like the different paths that they took the women down and the men down, and probably won't have time to get into that deeply now, but it just speaks to kind of what you're saying about how we're so different, right? And yet, like, it's just so beautiful because they're totally perfect complementary energies with each other. And so, on my best days, I really do have hope that a lot of this is being felt into, by some people, not everybody. But let me just pause for a minute because we're going to wrap up soon. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I just wanted to cover, or at least I just wanted to go back for a minute to what you said about aging. It's so true what you said, because breath work is a huge part of my spiritual practice in terms of the way I do it. I do the longer breath works where it's, like 30 to 40
Sure.
minutes of breathing gets you into an altered state. But that really has helped me to just shed so much. I'm 45 now and I feel like I look younger than when I was, 30, which is just what you're saying about when you just get rid of a lot of this debris and do your healing work. It just makes such a difference, right? Um, so yeah, that's huge. Are you into breath work at all?
Yeah, I mean, I I did a lot of sweat lodge work, right? And so the sweat lodge and sauna. So I'm more focused on, yeah, just using breath as a means to move into, yeah, to calm the heart when you're in a really high intense heat situation.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
but I have done deeper holotropic breath work and stuff in order, in groups, and I found it amazing. Um, but the recapitulation is the type of breath work that I do. It's just a very unique way in which you breathe that comes to you. But yeah, I do look forward to exploring a variety of breath work opportunities in the future.
Yeah, I would actually love to so for someone like me who might be interested in learning about the breath
Yeah.
technique, and we'll get into also what you want to share with people about your work and where they can find you. I know you have some programs and everything, but do you offer one-on-one sessions right now with people?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I do free 30-minute consultations. So I do 90-minute sessions. And yeah, I help people. I utilize the Toltec system, which is these specific shamanic movements that make it easier to recapitulate. And I help people with the recapitulation. Some people just want to use the sessions because they feel that they can talk to me about anything. And so we just talk. But a lot of people are focused on the Toltec stuff when they come to me, so I assist them in learning that side of it as well. Yeah, I have quite a few clients, and I'm teaching a dreaming course. My next one's called Earth Time. It starts on May 5th. Yeah, and there's quite a large group of people, really powerful people that take these courses with me. And so we dive deep into the Toltec stuff and go into some really cool places and sort of build that group intent together and explore a lot of magical concepts. And there's just waves of energy that come across the whole group. It's a real, very much a shifting experience for most people. And yeah, and then I also work with couples, at times when there's communication challenges. I help people to just get clear on their priorities, and so it's kind of a personal empowerment mentor and then shamanic dreaming arts teacher as well.
Mhm. Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And so people listening, maybe like they might feel like they're too much of a beginner or maybe a little bit intimidated. What would you say to them if they're interested in maybe some of your groups?
Yeah, it's beginners are welcome. It's designed for people to join at any point in their journey. It's a great introduction to the shamanic dreaming world. I'm not trying to be a shaman. I've studied with shamans because I think they have tools that are evolutionary for the future that we're heading into. In fact, the Toltec said that if we do not just, that humanity will perish if it doesn't remember what it's capable of doing. So we're very magical creatures. We've been conditioned to believe that we don't have a lot of options here, but we do. And now that we're in these times, I think we'll start to discover our resources more. So by all means, it's a great group of people to connect with, and beginners, you know, it's designed to offer support, and to introduce things in a very slow and steady way. I think it's important to go slow and steady on this path. And so, yeah, it's fully available to advanced and beginners.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And so last question for you. I'm just so curious. I just thought of this now, but so like let's just say that, more numbers of men and women open to maybe some of the things that you and I have talked about, and women really reclaiming their feminine and men really reclaiming the masculine and learning to work together consciously side by side. What would be your grand vision if all of this comes to pass? Like what would that world look like or feel like that we would live in together?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think so people don't recognize that lucid dreaming is a real viable means in which to travel into other worlds. And so I think as more and more people become aware of how beautifully intimate it is to do dreaming together, and that lovemaking can include lucidity in a level that is like traveling into other layers of the onion together. So you can set intentions together while you're connecting sexually, and you can learn to use that energy in a very particular way and open doors into other layers and start to see and understand our potential. So we're all designed to be given visions, right? That's why people go on vision quests. But a powerful relationship will also do the same when you're really in an evolutionary connection. And so if you start to imagine circles of people working together in community and sharing their experiences and inspiring each other and being in, very boundaried monogamy, healthy villages of people. Now, I'm not one that we would all want to live amongst each other. I think we're meant to be all over the world and connecting through these new methods that were being offered. Because when you end up trying to all live together, community is really tricky. Things get really culty. So we want to use and be strategic about how we form these relationships. And I think trying to live all up in each other's stuff and share homes, and I don't think that works. I think it's proven to backfire every time. And
Yeah.
so I think it's actually important for like a couple to stay together and not try to get so enmeshed in other couples' lives.
Mhm.
Uh, and if we could recognize that, then we could avoid a lot of difficult learning processes. But it's okay if people are in community and it works for them. I've just found that boundaries, space, privacy, my wife and I are very private. We're very careful about it's even hard for us to make decisions because we're very much live in the moment. So we're not good at commitment where it doesn't look like we're normal, but every day is really valuable to us. We're not just making decisions unconsciously. We we live as if we're going to live a long time, but we also are conscious that this could be our last day, and so we're very careful about it, all of that. So I think more and more people will be attracted to that concept of, yeah, really getting to know your partner, really. And if it's an evolutionary partnership, it's going to be really magical, and you're going to be able to talk and be together for durations of time that would seem out of balance to others. But at the same time, I think a relationship requires aloneness. So her and I have our totally separate lives. I go and spend a lot of time alone. She's training with all these different people and spends a lot of time alone. And that's what makes it possible for us to have, for us particularly, to be inside of this kind of development.
I think that's so essential. I absolutely need that too. I kind of call it the dance of union and separation in a partnership, right? Where you can learn to come together really intimately, but then also separate out into your own energy and just flow. It's so important, especially, I'm so introverted and I just have learned to build that in. Otherwise, it doesn't feel safe for me. But yeah, I love that vision that you have. And yeah, I also agree. I see some of those communities that people are kind of like drawn to doing that now, but I think it doesn't really end well for the most part. But for me, it's just so exciting if, to step into these evolutionary relationships more and more, having the personal experience of like how catalytic they are, how healing they can be, but then also the growth is just so massive. And so it's really exciting for me to see if more and more people can really understand how to open and work with them in this way, just the potential for humanity. I mean, for me, it's like I always say this and it sounds so dramatic, but practicing relationships in this way is a huge key to the evolution of humanity in my eyes. So that's why I'm so devoted to the work I do. But
Thank
Joel,
you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Is there any last words that you want to share before we close?
Sure. Yeah. Just, again, our imagination, our creativity, it's not that people don't realize that the pure affection that we felt from like 0 to 3, it's energy we can go back and remember, and we can tap into it through the recapitulation. And so um having that capacity and willingness to sort of review the feelings of your past, more and more feelings will start to surface, and your longing for that youthful energy is everything. Because without our youthful energy, then we turn into our parents because they didn't go back and get their youthful energy typically. And so we're in a time that's really key that we understand the value of either recapitulating or healing your past traumas and wounds, because that's where all this extra energy is sitting there waiting for you to come back. Where
Mm.
it might be inner child work. It's everybody has a different way in which they take care of this stuff. But I recommend people really look into recapitulating, and by all means feel free to reach out, and I can help people understand it better through kind of a one-on-one practice where we dive into it. So appreciate your time. It was so good to connect with you, and really glad we got to talk, and look forward to further conversations, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Joel. Yeah, I'm just personally really interested in probably booking a session with you and doing it myself. And so yeah, thank you again so much. I want to respect your time. We could probably talk for so much longer, but yeah, it was great to connect, and I'll reach out soon. Okay.
Wonderful. So good to connect.